Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us on this webinar called Nutrition for Health, Discover the Basics of a Healthy Diet, with myself, Danielle Crida from Igenis Healthcare Nutrition. We did record this webinar live a few days ago, but the sound quality was quite poor. So I'm just going to be talking through the information again. For those of you who were on the live webinar, you might notice it's a little bit different. There's not as much interaction with the audience. There's no poll or question and answer session, but we just wanted a clean recording, which is why I'm going to be speaking through the information again. So thanks for joining us. This is the second in our Wellbeing webinar series. And this is really a series that we're doing to look at factors other than supplements, which play a large role in health and well-being. So our first webinar in the series was looking at setting and achieving your health goals. And then our next one will be on telling you some nutritionist secrets for improving the nutritional value of everyday foods, and that will be on the 8th of January. All right, let's dive in. So this is our nutrition team at Igenis. We're always happy to answer any questions that you have, either on email or phone or live chat, so do get in touch. We're happy to advise you on any nutrition and supplement questions that you have. All right, so in this webinar, we're going to be taking a brief look at the basic ingredients of a nutritious and delicious diet. So we're going to look at what to eat to fulfill your macronutrient, vitamin and mineral requirements. We'll look at some food for gut health and also some tasty additions and nutritious snacks. And of course, we're focusing here on those who don't have any food allergies or intolerances. If you do have those, of course, just you know what you can't eat, but hopefully you'll be able to take something from this anyway. And what we're trying to just focus on is that healthy, nutritious eating doesn't have to be difficult. It can be quick. It's usually not expensive and really accessible to everyone. And it forms the foundation of health and well-being. And then we'll also just discuss a few tools to help you with this. So basically you will eat what's in your kitchen. So we'll look at maybe a pantry clean out, and then meal planning and a shopping list that you can use yourself and edit. So for those of you who are registered and did attend the webinar, you would have been getting those as handouts, the shopping list and the meal planning tool. But if you do want those and you weren't registered for the webinar, you can always just write in and we'll send those to you. All right, so as I said, we really believe that a healthy diet forms the foundation of good health. And whether you're looking to maintain your good health or to support chronic health conditions, you already have. Each meal is an opportunity to nourish ourselves with the macronutrients and the vitamins and minerals we need for optimal functioning, as well as the production of feel-good hormones that will really take care of our health, but also make us feel good about what we're eating and give us energy and all the good, feel-good neurotransmitters that we need to get through each day feeling great. All right, so there are different versions of what we call an ideal plate. This one happens to be the Canadian ideal plate. And at Igenis, we don't believe in cutting out any particular food group, but achieving balance. And what is common to a lot of diets that are popular these days is the notion that we need to eat many more vegetables and fruit than most people do. So we'd ideally like that to make up about half of your plate, so brightly colored fruit and veg. And then to moderate the amount of starchy carbohydrates that we eat. So you'll see on this plate, it's just making up a quarter of the plate. And then we'd like to include a good quality protein source, whether it's plant protein or animal protein at most meals. You'll see that in the top right corner. And then water or herbal tea as our drink of choice. And then of course what's not there, but which we'd like to include in small quantities, is healthy fats. And if you can include all of these components in most of your meals in a day, you should be able to fulfill your macronutrient requirements without counting calories. So by macronutrients, I mean carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. All right, so let's have a look at carbohydrates first. So when we think of carbohydrates, we often automatically think of those white and beige foods, so the starchy carbohydrates and the grains. But don't forget that vegetables and fruit are excellent sources of carbohydrates, the colorful ones, not the whitey beigey ones, as well as legumes are also great sources of carbohydrates. So let's have a look at that list on the left of helpful choices. So we'd want to get most of our carbohydrates from brightly colored vegetables and colored starchy vegetables. So by that I'm thinking of sweet potatoes, butternut squash, beetroot, brightly colored fruit, whole grains rather than refined grains. And when I say whole grains, I'm thinking of grains that actually look like grains, not bread, which is mostly refined wheat flour with a little bit of bran added. So whole grains, I'm thinking of things like rice, quinoa, buckwheat, and I'd encourage you to experiment with some of those that you haven't tried before, maybe even something like millet. All right, and then legumes, as I said, with the less healthful choices there on the right. Then for protein, I've listed the plant protein at the top of the list. So even if you're not vegetarian or vegan, for most of us, if we eat less animal products, it will be both more healthy for us and also for the environment. So let's have a look at the list. So whole food legumes like beans, tofu, tempeh, and peas. These are all good sources of plant protein, and they're all really quick to prepare. So for beans, you could keep some cartons or tins ready just to rinse and add to meals. Tofu and tempeh are both soya products. They've both been pre-cooked before making into the blocks. So they don't need a lot of cooking time. They can just be heated up quickly or shallow fried with some avocado oil or something like that. Peas, really quick. You can keep a bag of frozen peas in the freezer. Then don't forget that whole grains are also a good source of protein. We talked about those earlier. Raw nuts and seeds and nut butters, really high in minerals as well as protein. And then soya milk and yogurt. So of the non-dairy milks, soya milk is the most nutritious compared to the others. It usually has the highest protein content. And if you buy organic soya milk, often it doesn't have any additives in it either. And it can sometimes be calcium fortified as well. So just have a look at your non-dairy choices if you're interested in getting the most nutrition out of that. And then the animal products, so eggs, unsweetened dairy. When we're looking at fish, the most nutritious are probably the oily fish, and the small and wild oily fish have the least risk of contamination. So I'm talking about fish like sardines, mackerel, anchovies. Salmon is also a good source of omega-3, so that's why we want the oily fish. But farmed salmon can be really contaminated, both with heavy metals and also the conditions that the fish are farmed in, they're really prone to infection. So if you are going to buy salmon, rather buy it less often and maybe look for wild caught salmon. And then when choosing meat, you might want to look at meat that comes from a farm where the animals are possibly certified organic, but if not certified, that they do have a sort of a free range and naturally fed lifestyle, because both to reduce the risk of contamination with hormones and antibiotics, pesticides from their feed, but also they have better quality fat, and the fat that they do have is made up differently if they're roaming free compared to if they're confined in cages. And you might have a local farm in your area that you can buy meat and poultry from, but if not, there are some online suppliers that you can get it from. And what I would encourage you to do is maybe eat meat and poultry less often, but then buy higher quality when you do. So you'll be in that way helping your own health and helping the environment by buying it less often. And those are the less healthful protein choices. So at the top, the highly processed fake meat, what I meant by that was there are quite a few meat alternative products coming out now with the rise of veganism, but often they have a lot of additives added to them. It doesn't necessarily make them a healthy choice. So if you can stick with the whole food ones mentioned on the previous page, for the most part, that would be more helpful. Just a word there about roasting nuts. So heating up really any products with polyunsaturated fats does damage the fats. So that's why we really prefer raw nuts to roasted nuts. Okay, and then looking at healthy fats. So when we think about fats, remember that fats often don't come in the form of something that looks like an oil or a slab of butter, but can actually be present in whole foods that are nutritious in other ways. They don't only contain fats, but they contain vitamins and minerals as well. So, for example, avocados and olives, and then also their oils, of course, raw nuts and seeds, nut butters. Coconut oil is an oil, dark chocolate, and then animal fat in moderation. So for most people, good quality animal fat is all right. If you do have a problem with cholesterol, just keep an eye on how eating saturated fat affects it, because often it doesn't really affect it that much, but in some people it does. So of course the guidelines vary from person to person. Of those oils on the left-hand side, when you doing high heat cooking, such as frying, the best oil with the highest smoke point is actually avocado oil. Olive oil is probably better to drizzle on afterwards once the food is cooled down, rather than actually cooking with it. And then the less healthful choices that we want to avoid are foods that have been fried, either when they're already fried when they're bought from supermarkets, or takeaway foods, because these are often fried in unhealthy oils, often which has been reused, and those oils are really oxidized and can be inflammatory, so really not at all healthy, even if they're not saturated oils. All right, and then looking at micronutrients, so your vitamins and your minerals. If you base your diet on a whole food, plant-based diet, that will really supply most of the vitamins and minerals that you do need, and possibly even all of them. Okay, so what we want to do is eat our rainbow. So if you look at all the colors of those fruit and veg at the bottom of the slide, what we'd want to do ideally is every day eat something from each different color. So that we'd get in 5 to 9 different fruit and veg each day, even if they doesn't have to be in really great quantities, but each of the colors have different phytonutrients. So if you're preparing a meal, have a look at the colors on your plate and see what colors are missing and think, can't I just add a little bit of something? Because chances are you might have something, you might have maybe some red onion in your kitchen, or some blueberries or something that might satisfy your purple requirements for that meal. Just try and make all of your meals as colorful as possible. And then just a word about whole grains. So whole grains can be very mineral rich, but if they aren't prepared properly, then they contain substances called phytates, which bind the minerals tightly and prevent your body from absorbing them. So whole grains do need to be prepared properly with a little bit of forethought. So soaking helps to reduce the phytate levels so that the minerals are more available, as well as cooking, and sometimes even a step in between where you drain the water and let the grains maybe sit for a few hours. But that's a topic for another day. But if you're interested, you can have a look at the proper preparation of whole grains to reduce phytates. Now we want your food not only to be nutritious, but also delicious. So I've just made a list of some things that you can maybe think about popping on your shopping list so that they're available in your kitchen, so that you can make meals quickly, but also tastily. So I'm thinking about things such as ginger, garlic, onions and chilies, fresh herbs, dried spices and herbs. So apart from being tasty, herbs and spices are also really high in antioxidants and antimicrobials and other phytonutrients. So they actually are really health-giving. And especially in winter, as the weather gets colder, the more spices we can add to our food, the more protected we'll be against these winter germs that go around. All right, and then other things such as obviously salt and pepper. And then good to always have some jars of olives, capers, roasted red peppers, sun-dried tomatoes available to quickly add to meals, vinegar, then soya products such as miso, soy sauce, and tamari. So for those of you that don't know, miso is a soybean paste which has been cultured. It's really tasty, and you can add it to things like salad dressings or sauces. Because it is cultured, it also is high in probiotics, so really good for your gut health. And then nutritional yeast. So this is something that you can use in place of dairy cheese. It comes in little flakes and it has a nutty, cheesy flavor. So really good to sprinkle on dishes where you would usually use parmesan. So for example, risottos and pasta. And it is high in B vitamins and some minerals as well. All right, now most of us do have a sweet tooth or like a snack from time to time. Dark chocolate is a good choice, at least 70% cocoa. If you want to go without sugar or don't mind the taste, then you can even use 100% cocoa products like cacao nibs or cocoa or cacao powder or carob powder. And if you want to make a chocolatey paste, the cocoa or the carob powder can be mixed with some olive oil, and if you mix it with melted coconut oil and pop it in the fridge, it actually sets hard like chocolate. So it's quite easy to make your own chocolatey treats at home that don't contain sugar or milk if you're trying to avoid dairy. And chocolate has got a lot of magnesium as well as other minerals, so there's definitely goodness to be found in chocolate. And then raw nuts or nut butter makes a good snack. For example, peanut butter on apple slices. You can get roasted chickpea products now, which are just chickpeas, no oil, put in the oven, which you can order online. Then dried fruit in moderation and dates. Certain fruit and nut bars are healthy, for example, naked bars that just contain fruit and nuts. Fruit sweetened yogurts and kefir as opposed to sugar sweetened. So we'll get to these in the gut healthy foods soon. If you are buying honey, it's important to look for honey that hasn't been ultra processed. So honey has got lots of beneficial components such as enzymes and antioxidants and pollen. And for most commercial honey, they're ultra filtered and also heated. And this destroys lots of these beneficial products. So look for a local honey that you can maybe get in your health shop or a market. And then for some alternatives to sugar, which are a bit healthier, you could use something like dates or maple syrup, blackstrap molasses, which has got more minerals than sugar. And if you're trying to avoid sugar altogether, like if you have diabetes, then you might use a sugar replacer such as xylitol or erythritol. So you've probably heard a lot about the microbiome recently. So all the time we're learning new things about how your microbiome influences so many different systems in your body, including your mood, your weight, and so many different things. So really we want to improve the diversity of our gut flora and boost the healthy flora and not give the sugar-loving bacteria a chance to thrive. All right, so how are we going to do that? So the column on the left, prebiotics, all fruit and veg are good at feeding your gut bacteria, but examples like these are particularly good. So the members of the allium family, like onions, garlics, and leeks, Jerusalem artichokes, and then bananas, which are not very ripe. And then probiotics are foods which have been cultured or fermented and contain living bacteria. So for those, I'm thinking of vegetable products such as sauerkraut and kimchi, unpasteurized cheese, yogurts, and when you buy yogurts, look for ones that say that they've got live cultures in them, so that could be dairy or non-dairy. Kefir is traditionally a cultured dairy drink, but you can get coconut kefirs these days and kefir waters. Kombucha is a product which is grown, it's a symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeasts, and it's grown on in a sugary tea solution. And some of these things are also really easy to make at home. And then soya products, like I mentioned, miso, the soya paste, and then natto, which is fermented soya bean curd, if you're lucky enough to be able to get some near you. Now, with these products, the probiotics, it's really important to buy them from somewhere where they haven't been pasteurized and heated to kill off the beneficial bacteria. So most of the ones that you'll find in commercial stores will be pasteurized to some extent. So getting them from a health food shop is often a better idea, or making them at home yourself. And if you are new to them, just start slowly. So just a few teaspoons at a time, and then build up as your tolerance develops. All right, just a little word about beverages when you are shopping. So water and herbal teas, even caffeinated teas and coffee are all healthful. With water, hopefully you won't be buying bottled water. So both because of buying the water that's been stored in the plastic containers for a long time, there could be leaching of the plasticizers into the water. You might want to invest in a water filter for home. When you're drinking tea and coffee, just remember to, if it's caffeinated, not to drink it together with your meals, because it does decrease the absorption of minerals. You might be wanting to buy a dairy or non-dairy milk, and maybe for some variety, some kefir or kombucha, maybe some coconut water. If you are buying juice, we're not fans of drinking whole glasses of neat juice, just because it's a big sugar hit without any fiber to slow down its absorption. So if you are buying fruit juice, probably the best choice is 100% juice without additives, but then just a little bit poured into the glass and filled up with water. So it's more for the taste rather than the huge sugar hit. And with alcohol, if you drinking alcohol, maybe make a choice for alcohol which has some proven health benefits. So, for example, polyphenols in red wine versus alco pops and other sugar-sweetened artificial beverages. If you're deciding where to spend your money on organic products, because they are more expensive, but you might feel you would like to buy some for your health, then there's a list called the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15, and it's a list that's brought out every year by the Environmental Working Group. So the Dirty Dozen is a list of the 12 foods for that year, which are the most likely to be contaminated by pesticides once they've been taken home and washed in the usual way. So you can have a look each year and see what's on the list. It's usually strawberries and leafy greens like spinach and kale that come top of the list, as well as some of the fruits with soft skins that we tend to eat. And this is an example of the clean 15. So that's the foods that are least likely to be contaminated. At Hygienist, we believe in being kind to your health. And in terms of eating, we would go by the 80-20 rule. So what that means is when you're in control of what you're eating, so maybe 80% of the time, be kind to yourself by feeding yourself nutritiously and giving your body the correct fuel to perform optimally and to feel good. But then when you're not in control of what you're eating, like if you're eating out at family or friend's house, or maybe a colleague brings in cake for their birthday or something like that, don't feel guilty about having the occasional treat. So for most of us, if we have the occasional treat, it doesn't derail our health or our weight. And just be kind to yourself on those occasions by having a small treat and not feeling guilty, but then get right back on the bandwagon of feeding yourself nutritiously. If you are choosing to have your own treats, you can also choose to make those more healthy by having really high quality treats. So for example, if you don't usually have bread, but on a Saturday you do, instead of having white supermarket bread, maybe go to the bakery and buy a nice sourdough. Or if you're having ice cream, don't buy the cheapest ice cream at the supermarket, but go to a really nice ice cream shop. And that makes even the unhealthy healthier. But hopefully you enjoy all of your food, both the 80% and the 20%. As I said before, you will eat what's in your kitchen. So possibly you want to do a pantry clear out. So either by clearing out all the unhealthy food and donating what you can, which can still be used by someone, or maybe when something less healthy runs out, replacing it with a healthier alternative. So if you're going through your kitchen and looking at use by versus best before dates, so use by is generally seen on fresh products like animal products, and you can actually become ill by eating food after that date. Whereas the best before date, you probably won't become ill if you eat the food after that date, but it won't be as nutritious. If you're looking at canned foods, sometimes you can go over the best before date. Just the one exception is tomatoes. Because of the acidity in the tomatoes, it can start interacting with the can. So just be strict with tomatoes. And then for nuts and seeds and oils, often they have a shorter best before date than we would think, especially nuts and seeds. Their oils can go rancid, and you'll know that by their smell and their taste. So do yourself a favor and don't keep those around. If you've had nuts and seeds that have been hanging around in your cupboard for ages, just do get rid of them and buy fresh products. And then store them in the coldest place you can. And the same goes for some grains, for example, buckwheat. So if you have room in your freezer, you can store nuts and seeds in your freezer. If not, in your fridge, they'd be very happy in there, as well as some of your grains and even flours. And they will last longer than on the shelf. When it's cold, if you live in a place that's cold in winter and you don't have room in your fridge or freezer, you can even put them in a shed or somewhere where they'll keep colder than with the heating on at room temperature. All right. And then when you are feeding yourself really nutritiously, at least I find that there's no such thing as a one-stop shop if you're looking after your health and also your budget. So you might go into your regular grocery store and most of the products on the shelves are actually pretty processed and a lot are unhealthy, and you might need to shop around to get everything you need. So you'll probably have your regular grocery store. So you might be shopping online, which can suit people really well who live far from the shops or don't have a car. Some people who get tempted when they're in a shop by treats, and those with small children. All of those can probably benefit from online shopping. And then maybe you get your fresh fruit and veg at a local market or a farm shop or from a veg box delivery scheme. Remember that on the supermarket shelves, the fruit and veg has often been standing around for a long time. It might have had a long transport phase, and all of this decreases the nutrient value. So if possible, get your fruit and veg either as fresh as possible or frozen is also a nutritious option. And then if you're looking after your budget, you might be buying some items in bulk. Maybe you have a health food store that does that, or otherwise there are quite a few online stores where you can get a better price for buying in a large quantity. I mentioned the probiotic foods might be better to get at a health food shop or somebody that makes them locally where they haven't been pasteurized. And then you might be visiting other specialty shops like Oriental shops, baker, butcher, fishmonger for any particular products you need. So for example, I get my tempeh and my tofu, some local honey, a particular olive oil at my health food shop that I can't get at the supermarket. All right, so we're going to give you 2 other tools to help you along on your healthy eating journey. And if you haven't received these and you'd like them, just email into us. So they'll be blank when you get them. The one is a weekly meal plan. So I'd really encourage you to do that. It really helps you to plan your shopping and to ensure that you've got enough nutritious food in the house to make all of the meals you want. And you can laminate that and put it up on the fridge and write on it with whiteboard marker. And then the shopping list we're going to send will also be blank. And you can use that in 2 ways. You can either write on it the foods that you know you'll need to buy on a regular basis, and then you can maybe just add the ones that you might need after you've done your weekly meal plan. Or you can just laminate it blank and then write it from scratch every week based on what you've identified you'll need. And then we've left a little, some boxes at the bottom for you to write the things that you need to buy perhaps outside of your regular grocery store, just to remind you. So perhaps things you want to buy at your local health shop or a specialty shop you visit, maybe the things that you need to remember to buy in your next bulk buy order or your online shop. So hopefully those might help you. So that's the end of the webinar. Do get in touch if you've got any other questions or comments or want any advice. All right, and then you'll join us on the 8th of January for our next webinar on nutritionist secrets for the new year, how to boost the nutritional value of everyday foods. Thanks for joining us.